My voice trembled, raw with disbelief as I shouted, "How could you do this to us, Nate? 2 years, and you're just willing to throw it all away?" Nate shrugged, his expression cold and detached, as though he were already a world away from me. "Sometimes we realize what we truly want a little too late," he said, casting a glance over his shoulder as if the words didn't even matter. My heart pounded, but I forced out the words. "Get to know Claire. She's everything I need." The moment I said it, I felt my stomach twist in knots, the weight of my own betrayal sinking deep. And then Claire, with her sleek smile and false confidence, wrapped her arms around Nate's waist, walking into our home as though it had always been hers. Candles flickered on the dinner table, casting long shadows across the room. I stood there in my navy blue dress, the one I had carefully chosen for our 2nd anniversary, the one I had hoped would make the evening special. The air was thick with the smell of Nate's favorite dish, home-cooked lasagna. I had made it with my own hands, thinking it would be a celebration of everything we had. Nate stepped toward me, and for a moment, I thought maybe he would feel the weight of this, of us. But instead he shook his head, his voice casual, almost indifferent. "Let's not make this harder than it needs to be," he said, before casually tossing a manila envelope onto the dining table, the same one I had already known was coming. "The divorce decree?" My breath caught in my throat as I stammered, unable to grasp the reality of what was happening. Claire, with her too perfect smile, slid closer to Nate, whispering in a tone that made my skin crawl. "You're leaving me for her?" "People change, Liz," she said, her voice scraping at my nerves like nails on a chalkboard. I stood there, frozen, as everything I thought I knew about love and loyalty began to unravel before my eyes. My meticulously constructed existence was collapsing. Anger and pain swelled beneath my skin, but I made myself remain calm. I wouldn't let either of them enjoy watching me break. I looked directly at Nate and said, "So, this is it? You just walk away and forget everything we've built?" "Yes, Liz," he said in an unbelievably composed tone. "This is it." Nate turned and ushered Claire to the door. Claire looked back almost triumphantly as they crossed the threshold. Nate muttered, "Goodbye, Liz," without looking into my eyes, and then the door abruptly closed, leaving me by myself in a strange house. I sank into a chair as my legs gave way and I gazed at the divorce papers on the table, the ink stained by tears I couldn't recall crying. 2 years gone in a flash. I was distracted from my thoughts when the doorbell rang, and when I answered it, Riley was standing there with a confused and worried expression on her face. "Liz, what happened?" Her gaze swept over me, taking in the papers on the table, the unfinished food, the dimmed candles, and the situation. I then realized what I was doing and grabbed the papers to show her. I responded simply, in a hollow voice, "Nate left. Divorce." Riley's eyes widened. Riley entered the room with her arms wrapped around me and said, "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry." I felt a sob rise in my throat but swallowed it down. "He brought her here, told me she's everything he needs." "What? Why? How?" "It's Claire." I spat the name out like it was poison. Standing there seemed both bizarre and heartbreaking because the evening had devolved from a celebration into a horror. I needed to pull myself together. "I'm going to go pack a bag," I remarked, sounding more composed than I actually was. "I can't stay here tonight," Riley hurriedly answered. "Come to my place. We'll work this out together." I nodded and walked past her, making my way to the bedroom, where pictures of Nate on the wall, his favorite chair, and our shared closet were all over me. With increasing rage, I threw everything into a suitcase, each piece of evidence now serving as a reminder of his treachery. How could he have done this to me, to the house we shared? But obsessing over it would not make it any better. Riley took hold of my hand as I zipped up the bag and made my way to the living room. "You're not alone in this," she said, her presence a lifeline in my storm-tossed thoughts. I needed to be strong, to act, to move forward. I smiled weakly at her, expressing my gratitude beyond words. "Thanks, Riley. Let's leave." We left everything we knew behind, and left, even though Nate caught me off guard tonight. This was just the beginning. Riley's apartment was a cozy mess in contrast to my now sterile house, with vibrant paintings on the walls and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee filling the air. We sat on her shabby couch, a box of Kleenex between us, and I clasped my mug, thankful for the heat that was leaking into my palms. It felt warm, alive, everything I needed. "All right, Liz," Riley said in a formal tone. I inhaled deeply and said, "We need to talk about what happened. Get it all out." Riley's eyes clouded as he handed me divorce papers after telling me she was everything he wanted and walking in with her as if it were the most normal thing in the world. "That bastard! For what duration has this been occurring?" I paused, attempting to put everything together. "I don't know, but last year, remember the trip I paid for in full? The one he insisted on getting back in touch with after being away?" Riley nodded, her eyes glimmering with rage. "Everything was paid for by you." I had a sudden epiphany. "My God, Liz, do you believe she was with him then?" "It fits, doesn't it? I couldn't see it since I was blind, but he must have used that trip to meet her." Riley shook her head and whispered, "We ought to have noticed the indications. His conversational style has always been fluid, but this degree of dishonesty—" I peered into my coffee, my thoughts racing. Riley nodded, resolve flaming in her eyes. "I need to understand why, Riley. I can't move on without knowing the truth." After that, we dig. We learn the extent of his deception. However, you must first get some rest. I couldn't sleep that night. The arrogant features of Nate and Claire haunted me every time I closed my eyes. The inquiries persisted. Why hadn't I noticed the signs? Was I ever loved by him? Not even. There were no answers when morning arrived. Riley was waiting in the kitchen, already dressed and prepared, while I dragged myself out of bed. She pushed me to eat something, slipping me a plate of toast and eggs, saying, "Then we'll start digging." I took a few bites, but my hunger was gone. I pushed the dish aside and said, "Where do we even begin?" Riley took out her laptop and said, "Social media is a good start. People usually make mistakes up there." We spent hours sorting through pictures and posts and putting pieces together. A troubling trend became apparent. I had no idea how long Nate and Claire had been together. Dinners, vacations, and even suggestions of business trips he claimed to be on alone were all included. "Look at this," Riley remarked, indicating a photograph of Nate taken on vacation the previous year. "That's the same beach where Claire uploaded a photo. Same date." My heart froze. Riley slammed the laptop down. "I funded their affair," I murmured. "They were there together when he said he needed space." "This is unforgivable, Liz, but we'll use this. We'll make him regret every lie." Her determination fueled my own. "You're correct," she responded. Riley patted my shoulder and said, "We gather everything. We need proof for confronting him. I want everyone to know who he truly is. We'll overcome this." Together, we delved deeper as the days grew into nights, with every new piece of evidence strengthening my resolve. My drive for justice was fueled by every lie and betrayal. Nate had misjudged me. He was mistaken to believe that I would break down. Every restless night made me realize how betrayed he was. I wouldn't simply make it through this. Nate would be held accountable for his acts, and I would emerge stronger and wiser. My retaliation was obvious from the start. Collect everything, keep track of all betrayals. I would develop my case piece by piece, and when the moment was appropriate, I would reveal everything, revealing Nate and Claire for who they really were. I had a glimmer of optimism with Riley by my side. Her confidence in me served as my compass. I would take back each piece of my broken existence and use it as armor. Nate had made his decision. It was my chance to select mine now. Riley's eyes were fixed on her computer screen as she brought me a cup of tea. "You must see this, Liz," she remarked in a tight tone. My heart thumping, I leaned over. Nate's old social media profile, which he hadn't used in years, was shown on the screen. Riley pointed to a picture from 4 years prior and remarked, "It's him with Claire." Posing together, they looked content and relaxed. I squinted. She claimed that they were acquainted long before you two were married. Check out their captions. It's more than a passing fancy. A knot in my stomach tightened. Claire wasn't a new romantic interest. She has consistently remained in the background. Riley read over additional posts. Do you recall your honeymoon? They shared the same location. Claire shared images of the same sites on social media. My heart pounded. Do you mean that during our honeymoon Nate had her there? Riley had a serious look on his face. Liz, that's how it appears. I became enraged. How was that possible? How could he have been unfaithful to me from the beginning? Riley stated. We need more than just these pictures. We require evidence that directly connects them, particularly financial evidence. Let's investigate further. Days passed while we gathered evidence, each finding more damning than the last. It became evident that Nate had been using our joint accounts to pay for presents, dinners, and vacations, leading him to lead a second life. One evening, Riley pulled up a credit card bill and stated, I found something. Charges from 2 different cards in various locations coincide with your honeymoon. He was unable to be by himself. Now the treachery was painfully obvious. Even then, he funded his affair with our money. Riley gave a sad nod. We must face him, but not just yet. Someone with legal knowledge is what we need. Henry, your brother? The thought came to mind immediately. He will know what to do indeed. It was difficult to call Henry. Telling your brother that your marriage was a fraud is a difficult task. His voice, however, was the same solid rock it had always been when he responded. Hello, Liz. How are things going? His voice seemed worried. Not really, I said. Nate went out. Everything is in disarray because he has been having an affair. Henry's tone changed to that of a lawyer. I'll be over. We'll resolve this. After an hour, Henry listened to all we had discovered while seated at Riley's dining table. He said, This is serious. Nate has stepped over the line, betrayed money, and perhaps committed fraud. I took a deep breath. How do we proceed? We record everything, Henry said. We expose him for who he really is and make sure your divorce leaves him with nothing. They had a plan. Now, under Henry's direction, we proceeded to collect evidence. Every new finding strengthened my determination. I refused to break, even though Nate had harmed and misled me. I came into an old journal and turned through pages of Nate's kind comments and unfulfilled promises. My resolve was strengthened by each falsehood. Data gathering took place over the course of several weeks. The whole picture was portrayed by the web of deception we were able to piece together. Claire's obliging cooperation, Nate's deft manipulation, and my unquestioning trust were all taken advantage of. Riley then stormed into my room one morning, beaming with joy. I discovered it, Liz, evidence that, despite his claims that the money was for bills, he sent it straight to Claire. I inhaled deeply. It's this. He is with us. Henry nodded his approval as he went over the finished pieces. It is airtight. Claire and Nate won't be aware of what happened to them. At last, the way to my retribution seemed obvious. Nate miscalculated when he believed he could throw me out like yesterday's news. I would expose his true nature to everyone and ensure that he was held accountable for all the suffering he inflicted. With Riley and Henry at my side, I felt prepared for the last stage. The moment for confrontation was approaching, and we had gathered all the necessary proof. I would rise stronger from the ashes of Nate's treachery, and he would have to deal with the fallout from his actions. We had to dig for weeks before we have enough proof to face Nate. However, I knew I couldn't approach him directly. He was the type of man who required demonstration rather than explanation. Stacks of documents and digital files were spread out in front of Riley and me as we sat at her kitchen table. With a stern expression, Henry joined us via video call. Henry stated it was time for the next move. Liz, continue gathering proof. We must demonstrate a definite pattern of dishonesty and financial abuse. Steeling myself, I nodded. I answered firmly, we need to make sure I don't come out of this with nothing. Riley gave my hand a squeeze. We're here for you at every turn. Over the course of the following days, we meticulously went over further emails and statements. Everything needed to be in its proper place. with each piece of evidence serving as the precise puzzle piece that would show the full picture of Nate and Claire's treachery. "Look at this," Riley remarked abruptly, her voice full of excitement. "He has been moving funds to an account located abroad. He is undoubtedly helping more than simply Claire." My eyes got big. One more untruth. Is he concealing anything else? Every rock we turned seemed to reveal a new secret. Not only was Nate disloyal, he was a liar who funded a double life with our wealth and me. Riley entered my room one evening with a laptop. "You must see this, Liz." I glanced at the screen. Once more, their connection was on display on social media, this time showcasing a recent party they went to together. Claire was in Nate's arms as he laughed. "He no longer even conceals it." However, Riley spoke with a tone of contempt. "He's flaunting her." A chilly fury took hold of me. "Let's make use of his pride in her. We'll reveal them to the world. They desire attention." On the phone, Henry's voice crackled with approval. "Liz, that's a good concept. Next month, Nate's company will organize a charity gala. Public place, several eyes, the ideal chance." I began to formulate a plan. "There, we'll tell you everything. Let everyone see the truth, including his friends and co-workers." Riley smiled. "Let's make it truly amazing. We can create a slideshow and schedule its release to coincide with his address." There was a lot of preparation going on in the days before the gala. Every little detail counted. Nate showed off his relationship with Claire more and more as we grew closer, which strengthened my resolve. Riley and I worked late into the night to finish the PowerPoint, which included financial documents and personal images, along with a startlingly clear history of their betrayal. Every slide was a nail in Nate's coffin of dishonesty. The night of the gala finally came. I took great care in my attire, selecting a sophisticated yet understated gown. I had to appear calm and untouchable. My rock, Riley, appeared ferocious and resolute. "Are you prepared?" She looked at my face and inquired. "Ready?" I said in a firm voice. Henry gave me a comforting nod as he met us outside the stadium. "Let's get this done." When we walked in, Nate and Claire were already there, mixing with the crowd, and the gala was in full swing. Despite my stomach churning, I forced myself to calm down. I had the opportunity to expose them and take back my life. We went up to the AV team in private, displaying the memory stick containing our presentation. Riley's tone begged no question. "Play this during Nate Walker's speech." Unaware of the shocking revelation they were about to deliver, the crew simply nodded. My heart pounded as Nate strode onto the platform, cocky and confident. Riley squeezed my hand one last time. "It's showtime." Unaware of what was about to happen, Nate began his speech. Our meticulously put-together slideshow started playing at the ideal time, with every obscene detail flickering on the TVs across the space. The air was filled with gasps. When Nate saw the proof exposed for everyone to see, his self-assured exterior fell apart. Claire's face went white as a ghost. I moved forward with a firm, clear voice. "You have praised and trusted this liar, cheater, and thief. The actual Nate Walker is this." Shocked whispers and critical glares filled the crowd. My ruse had been successful. When Nate and Claire's masks were taken off, everyone who mattered in their lives could see who they really were. I felt as though a burden had been lifted as we left the event. Henry was right behind Riley as he put his arm around me. This was only the start of their demise. However, it was the beginning of something new for me. A life free from Nate's deceit. A future I would take back according to my own terms. The consequences of the gala were severe and swift. There must have been an overwhelming volume of calls and texts on Nate's phone. All right, he earned it all. On her couch, Riley and I enjoyed wine and takeout to celebrate our little triumph. Riley raised her glass and murmured, "To the first step." I echoed, my glasses clinking, "To the first step." However, this was not the end. It was only getting started. Henry returned the following morning, looking happy. Nate's reputation suffered greatly. "Word is getting out quickly that his coworkers are doubting his integrity." Riley noted, however, that he will attempt to spin it. "We require more." Henry leaned forward in agreement. "Liz, we need a strategy to make the most of the information we have." I nodded. "Make sure it sticks legally." I've been surreptitiously gathering more proof of his financial carelessness in our accounts. as well as in his interactions with Claire. Riley pulled up our files on her laptop. This is what we have discovered: deposits, transfers, and other costs into that offshore account. He was cautious, but not sufficiently so. Henry's eyes sparkled with admiration. This is powerful. We record it, show it to his business, and, if necessary, the police. I was still simmering with anger, but it was focused now. Let's get this done. He will not escape punishment. Over the course of the following week, Riley and I compiled all of our findings into an extensive report. I combed through previous emails, reported any questionable activity, and organized everything. Riley jumped in one day, her face beaming with pleasure, while I was going through our old financial accounts. We have a chance to make the announcement public, Liz. Another event, a significant board meeting, is being held by Nate's company. My thoughts were racing. We must attend the meeting. Henry concurred. We can guarantee his professional and personal demise if we can obtain a presentation in front of his board. We plotted, trying to figure out how to get into the meeting that was set for next week. Henry pulled some legal levers to gain us permission to attend, and Riley charmed her way into giving us the meeting specifics. I was nervous and excited at the same time the night before the meeting. We have it all, don't we? As I checked our files again, I inquired. Yes, Riley answered with assurance. Nate won't be aware of the impact. Remember, Liz, you're just presenting facts, Henry continued. Show them the reality. With our heads held high, we entered Nate's company on the morning of the meeting. Although we received strange looks from security, our IDs and appointment information were sound. It was a scary boardroom. Serious faces, a long table, and pricey clothes. Nate turned from surprise to rage when he saw us come in. Liz, what are you doing? He snarled. I looked him in the eye evenly. Nate presenting the truth? Our presentation is set up. Nate's face turned pale as each slide flashed by, revealing the full extent of his dishonesty. The board members' reactions varied from astonishment to rage. Mr. Evans, one of the board members, leaned forward. Walker, is this accurate? Have you embezzled money for your own benefit? Nate stumbled. All of this is false information made up by a resentful ex-wife. Henry got to his feet. We have verified financial statements, transfer records, documentation, and even private emails linking Mr. Walker to serious financial wrongdoing. Whispers filled the room. The overwhelming evidence overcame Nate's attempts to defend himself. Mr. Evans held up a hand for stillness at last. You are hereby suspended, Mr. Walker, while a thorough inquiry is conducted. Thank you for having the guts to bring this to our attention, Ms. Thompson. Nate's expression contorted in rage. Liz, you'll regret this. I glared back at him, determined. No, you will, Nate. I felt a wave of justice as we walked out of the building. Although it wasn't the last straw, this was a significant setback for Nate. The truth was out, and we had made great progress in taking back my life thanks to Riley and Henry. Riley gave me a strong hug. Liz, you succeeded, I responded, my voice hardened with conviction. It's not over yet. However, we're making progress. With its sea of sophisticated gowns, well-tailored suits, and clinking champagne glasses, the charity gala was as extravagant as events come, but there was a thrilling sense of expectation behind the glitz and grandeur. We were going to make everything public this evening. Riley and I walked inside the hall with a confidence that was very different from the last gala we went to. Henry had arranged our invitation under the guise of sponsorship from his law company. Every step had been carefully planned. I sensed the same mixture of rage and resolve rising as Nate ascended the stage for his keynote address. His soft voice concealed the lies we were going to reveal as he started talking. Riley pushed me. Are you okay? I nodded while gripping the projector's remote control. Let's get this done, I interrupted Nate in the middle of his sentence. The first slide behind him flashed on, changing the mood of the room. Pardon me, everybody, I began, interrupting Nate's rehearsed monologue. He froze, his bewilderment turning to rage. Liz, what are you doing? Disregarding him, I hit the remote control, and the incriminating slideshow started. Each slide provided a more vivid image of Nate's treachery, including pictures of him with Claire, financial records demonstrating his thievery, and intimate communications. Whispers and gasps swept over the audience. Nate's composed exterior broke, his gaze flitting between the slides and his coworkers' startled expressions. He insisted that it be turned off, but nobody complied. His anger flared. All of this is a fabrication. Lies. From a corner came a voice. Nate's board member, Mr. Evans, stated, "Not based on the verified documentation we've received. This evidence is reliable." Claire stood with a startled expression amid the guests. "What is this, Nate?" she shouted. Nate sputtered. "It's not what it appears to be, Claire." He was interrupted by the voice of another woman. "Yes, that's precisely how it appears." A surprise turn. Nate's coworker Jane, whom he had also been covertly seeing, came forward. "Nate promised me we'd be together. Nate promised me we'd be together. He has been deceiving us all." Chaos broke out in the room. Nate is being inundated with questions and allegations from friends, coworkers, and even some family members. His meticulously crafted facade was collapsing. Henry came over to me grinning contentedly. "Liz, we've succeeded. Talking his way out of this is not an option." After silently observing, Nate's parents finally spoke. With tears in her eyes, his mother questioned Nate. "How could you do this to Liz? And to us?" Riley gave Nate our last document, divorce papers, which described his financial misdeeds and infidelity in legal terms, while he attempted to repair what was remained of his reputation. "You're served," she stated icily. I took a step toward Nate and looked him in the eyes. "I was underestimated by you. This goes beyond retaliation. It has to do with fairness." Devastated and humiliated, Nate was led off the property. There was no more concealing now that the truth was known. A feeling of validation descended upon me as we departed the event. Nate's harm was revealed, and his reputation was permanently damaged. Although it took a lot of effort to win, the effort was worthwhile. With pride in her eyes, Riley gave me a hug. "Liz, you succeeded. You regained control," Henry continued. "It only gets better from here." In sharp contrast to the storm we had let loose inside, the night was quiet. It seemed like the beginning of a new chapter in which I seized control of my own narrative rather than playing the victim. The broken remnants of Nate's dishonest life were left behind as we strolled into the night, and as we proceeded, I had a sensation I hadn't had in a while. I hope. The most difficult portion of my journey was completed, but it wasn't finished yet. I knew I could handle whatever came next because Riley and Henry were by my side. The fall of Nate was only the start. There were many opportunities along the path to repairing my life, and I was prepared to accept it all for the first time in a long time. I finally felt the weight of everything we had done as we left the venue and entered the cool night air. Even if Nate was exposed, the suffering he inflicted remained. Even though the legal battle was just getting started, I felt oddly at ease. I was jerked back as Riley's phone buzzed. She gave it a quick look and smiled. "Nate is already popular for all the wrong reasons, according to Henry. The business is working to minimize damage." I forced a tiny smile. "Excellent. He is deserving of all of it." I sat in Riley's kitchen the following morning, drinking coffee and scrolling through many Nate News notifications. Overnight, he had gone from being a well-respected individual to a public embarrassment. Holding up her phone, Riley entered the room. "You must see this, Liz." She showed me a live stream from a nearby news station on her phone. As he attempted to get through a throng of reporters, Nate's image filled the screen. "Is it accurate to say that you stole money from your business to finance your affair, Nate Walker?" a reporter yelled. "What would you say to your ex-wife and your family, Mr. Walker?" Someone else added their voice. Nate's expression was one of panic and anger. He said, "No comment," and pushed by them, getting into a car. With my determination solidifying, I returned the phone to Riley. "He's becoming uncontrollable. We must continue to exert pressure. In order to bolster our case against Nate, we spent the day obtaining further evidence." We gathered enough by the afternoon to make sure he wouldn't evade his financial and legal responsibilities. Henry called later. "Liz, you performed admirably last night, but we must act quickly. Nate will probably act frantically. Have you thought about contacting his other victims?" I hadn't. "Do you believe they would be helpful?" "They may if they have gone through what you have." Henry retorted that solidarity can be effective. Riley and I made a list of Nate's known financial victims and affairs, and made discreet contact with each of them. Despite their hesitation, a handful consented to meet with us in order to tell their story. Ellen, one of the women, consented to meet us in a nearby cafe. She appeared worn out from carrying the burden of Nate's dishonesty. With remorse in her eyes, she continued, "I never thought he'd cheat on me too," I said. "Thank you, Ellen, for coming forward. To hold Nate accountable, we need your assistance." Ellen gave a nod. "Whatever it takes, I'll do it. He should not deceive anyone else." More ladies and co-workers came forward when word got out, giving us insightful testimonies. Each strengthened our argument by contributing a piece to the puzzle. As we were putting the finishing touches together one evening, Riley opened an email from an unidentified sender. "You ought to see this, Liz." More incriminating evidence was included in the email, demonstrating that Nate had fabricated paperwork to hide his activities and embezzled money from several accounts. The final nail in his coffin was that. "This is it," remarked Henry, glancing over the email. "He's with us. There's no way Nate can get out of this." The last confrontation was the next stage. With our proof in hand, we set up a meeting with Nate. He showed up looking gaunt and utterly defiant. "Liz, what do you want?" Still holding on to his conceit, he spat. Each single piece of evidence I presented was more devastating than the one before it. When Nate realized how much we had, his facade broke down. I said, "Nate, you're done. Unless we take this to court and you lose everything, here is your chance to come clean and make apologies." Nate's bluster vanished and was replaced by a defeated expression. "What are you looking for from me?" he muttered, forcefully. "Admit everything, make amends and provide an apology to the people you have harmed, then leave my life forever." With empty eyes, Nate nodded. "Yes, I will." I felt a feeling of closure as he left. Nate was shattered and his destructive journey had finally come to an end. With a weight off my shoulders, I turned to face Riley and Henry. Riley replied, "He's done," with a tone of relief. "And now, Liz, you can begin rebuilding on your terms," Henry continued. As I stood there with my buddies, I understood that my quest was about more than just getting even. It was about taking back my life, embracing my wounds, and pursuing my newfound goals. Even though I didn't know what lay ahead, I was prepared to take things one step at a time. The consequences of Nate's exposure continued to be unrelenting as the weeks went by. His social circle vanished, his profession was in shambles, and he was getting into more and more legal issues. Under Henry's knowledgeable direction, the divorce process proceeded swiftly, leaving Nate with very little of what he had before. Riley and I sipped wine on her terrace one evening. As I watched the sunset, I remarked, "It's almost surreal how everything fell apart in his face." Riley acknowledged that he earned all of it, but now it's your turn to start over. She was correct. I hadn't really thought about what would happen to me next because I had been so intent on taking down Nate. The future was open to me now that the divorce was finalized and Nate was no longer in my life. "Have you considered what you want to do?" Riley inquired. I have a slight smile creeping up, I said. "I want to form a non-profit or assist others who have experienced similar betrayals." Riley's eyes glistened with anticipation. "Liz, that's a great idea, and you'd be fantastic at it." We started outlining the charity's plans together. For those who had experienced betrayal, we envisioned a network of support that would include emotional, legal, and counseling services. It gave me a sense of empowerment and gave me a reason to help others. Meanwhile, everything began to settle down. I took on more hours at the hospital, finding strength in the support of my coworkers and comfort in my profession. One in particular, James, a compassionate and empathetic physician who had just joined the team. James caught up to me one afternoon as I was leaving the hospital. "Liz, I've been wanting to ask if you'd like to go out to dinner." I stopped, astonished but happy. "James, I'd enjoy that. Dinner sounds delicious." We started having dinner dates on a regular basis. James was kind, considerate, and patient. He supported my new pursuits while still allowing me time to recover. I didn't know I missed the warmth that came with our growing proximity. James gazed at me with a mixture of caring and concern one evening when we were eating supper at a little restaurant. "You've gone through a lot, Liz. I simply want you to know that I will always be there for you. I squeezed his hand as I reached across the table. James, thank you. In all of this gloom, you have been a light. James grinned. I'm happy I can support you. In sharp contrast to the chaos with Nate, things with James felt proper and natural. I felt as though I could finally breathe and live. News of Nate periodically made its way through all of this. His reputation was in ruins, he was having trouble finding work, and he had lost his job. I once saw him in a degrading job, a shadow of the person he used to be. Justice was done. When Riley and I started our nonprofit, the response was tremendous. People from all walks of life reached out to me, grateful for a space where they could find both support and understanding. It was a feeling I hadn't expected, a sense of fulfillment that came from helping others find their footing. In a way, it was the perfect form of retaliation for Nate's betrayal. Witnessing lives transformed, healing and growing, all because of the work we were doing together. James and I attended one of our charity events on a bright, sunny spring day. He had been invaluable, stepping in to help at every turn, never asking for anything in return. As the event wound down and the crowd began to disperse, he pulled me aside, his expression serious. I can tell you're really passionate about this, Liz, he said, his voice low but sincere. You're amazing. The words hit me like a wave, and for the first time in a long time, I felt truly seen. My heart warmed, and I couldn't help but smile at him, a smile that felt like it came from a place of pure gratitude. James, thank you, I said, my voice steady but filled with emotion. You've been essential to this success. His grip on my hand tightened and our eyes met, a moment of unspoken understanding passing between us. I'm really proud of you, he said, his words grounding me. We've both come a long way. In that moment, I was filled with an overwhelming sense of calm. Surrounded by the people I had impacted and the new life I was building, I felt as though I had finally found my place. Nate's betrayal no longer loomed over me. It had faded into the distance. Despite the painful journey, I had emerged stronger, with a clearer sense of purpose. When I glanced at Riley, James, and the others by my side, I knew deep in my heart that I was finally home. If you want to dive deeper into stories of resilience, transformation, and new beginnings, make sure to subscribe to SoraBook. You won't want to miss the next chapter. It might just inspire you to change your own life.